It's like the season finale of our first HBO season. This is where you learn like, oh, the guy was actually, he was married and his ex-wife is a lesbian and she lives down the hall. That was before I was out.
Right. I wondered that. Yeah.
I wasn't even out to myself.
Hello and welcome to What's Underneath,
the podcast that will inspire self-acceptance through empowering you to embrace what's unrepeatable in you.
I'm Lily Mandelbaum, and sitting next to me is my mom, Elisa Goodkind.
And we are StyleLikeU. Each week we bring you interviews with diverse nonconformists about their relationship to style, self-image, and identity. Being radically honest without shame and holding that honesty with compassion is self-acceptance.
If you fall in love with our guests as much as we do, you can see them in their full self-expression on our YouTube channel and Instagram using the handle @StyleLikeU.
And if our stories open your eyes or are transformative on your own journey towards acceptance, please consider becoming a member of StyleLikeU on Patreon so that we can continue creating a world where everyone feels comfortable and safe in their skin.
To support our work, head over to patreon.com/StyleLikeU. A huge thanks to Oli Biologique for sponsoring this episode of What's Underneath.
With the idea that we need to celebrate, not fix our natural selves, Oli's skincare products aim to get your skin glowing with no filters and no extraneous hype.
We love Oli oils for their uncomplicated, wellness-based, clean approach to our daily skincare routine, coupled with a no silver bullet promises ethos.
Just all natural skin-supporting nourishment. Deliver the nutrients your skin craves fast and get your own Oli oils via Amazon, plus 20% off with code StyleLikeU20.
That URL is www.amazon.com/Oli Biologique, and that link will also be in the show information. So, Mom.
Hi, Lils.
Hi, how are you?
Good, very good.
Where are we today?
Well, sitting in a sun-drenched loft in Bed-Stuy with Katja, who is the creator of High Maintenance. I don't really have to do much explaining at this point about High Maintenance. I don't even know what the TV realm would be like without it right now. It's so epic. And she's wearing an orange sweater and to match the sun that's pouring in here right now. So we're drinking turmeric tea that's also orange, and I'm wearing an orange jumpsuit. So it's, kind of beginning of spring, and we're really excited to get to know Katja. How are you feeling?
Feeling great today. It's a good day of the month. I don't know how that is for y'all, but for me, there's definitely very specific days of the month that don't feel like myself, and my hormones really rule and bring me into like a land of depression and darkness and anger and anxiety and all kinds of stuff. This is not one of those weeks, so I'm really glad that it worked out that we're talking on one of my like good weeks, an up week where I feel like I'm sort of firing on all cylinders and I feel like very well. And I just came back from Puerto Rico, so I feel really well rested. Just resting, restoring myself, enjoying some sun. Yeah.
You just finished shooting a new season, right?
Yeah, well, we finished quite a while ago. We wrapped up shooting in October, and thank you for that really nice intro, by the way.
It's true.
Very sweet of you. And it just makes me feel so good that what I'm doing is resonating with people like you, because why else should I do this, you know?
Right.
But yeah, we wrapped up in October, but wrapped post-production in February. Right. So that was not that long ago. And I was very cold and was just like, let's get out of here. So my girlfriend and I went to Puerto Rico.
Can you talk about what you think your style says about you?
Well, right now I'm very much in kind of like a uniformy vibe, and it's all very easy and approachable. Like I like to look unfussy. I don't like to look like, I like to look like a person who did not think a lot when they were getting ready. And there's always something that's sort of, not always, but a lot of times I feel like I'm wearing something that's kind of humorous, if that makes sense. Like something that's like very aggressively maybe ugly, but in a thoughtful way. Or like I love a very obvious bootleg. Like I have this shirt that's like Tupac in Maryland, that's just like
so ironic.
Yeah, or like I have stuff like that I just, or like I have this backpack that's very obviously manufactured, and it seems abroad. And it's like these little prints of like Obama and Michelle, like the Obamas like on magazine covers that are fake, and like Rihanna and Beyonce, and that's it, like all over this backpack. And I don't know, I love stupid shit like that.
Do you get comments on it?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think also they're conversation starters.
Yeah. And what have you always been so expressive with your style?
Yes, I have, but with periods of not so much expression. I think if I look back at like kid photos of me, when I was very little, before I was deciding what I was going to wear for myself, my mom was dressing me, and she was very handy with the sewing machine. And I think when I got to start choosing my own clothes, like I definitely did play a lot with just like patterns and even like gender a little bit. I went through, I feel like, a period when I was like 8 where I cut my hair really, really boy short. I wore a lot of color and also kind of like humorous stuff back then too. And then I think, I went through puberty, and, it all coincided with changing schools. I'd been in the same school since I was like really small through 6th grade, like the same preschool through 6th grade. It was a religious school. And so it was just like changing schools, going through puberty. Like my body was carrying a lot of weight, and I just wanted to hide. And so like I started wearing like really baggy stuff and not really caring that much. And then when I was like 14 and sort of coming into like my sexuality more with like the baggy, like boys' clothes and things that would hide me, my hair got long and in my face. And if I look back in my life, times when I wasn't doing that well emotionally is when I'm wearing like really baggy clothes and have so much hair.
What do you think are the assumptions that people make about you based on how you appear or your style?
Oh, wow. I wonder. I feel like I'm so bad at having any sense of what people think of me. I think what I think about myself is like so often not it at all. I'm such a self-conscious, insecure person who really feels like I have to give myself a pep talk to get out of the house a lot of days.
Do you think you're an introvert?
Yes, in the sense that I do. Well, I don't know anymore. I for a long time I was saying that I was, but I don't think that my true self is an introvert. I think if I look back at my life, I'm an extra. Like I was that kid that was always like, well, I was an only child, so I was very comfortable with people's eyes on me because they were, and that translated to me, feeling the same way in school spaces. I went to a religious school. There was like 12 of us in a class. So I had this comfort. I was very lucky to have that kind of comfort of safety, of being able to speak freely and be myself. And I roll my eyes when I think back to, being a kid. I would sometimes, like over a weekend, I would learn like a song or make up a dance routine. And then I would like come to school Monday and subject literally the whole class to it. To like, I would suggest to like the teacher, like, can we have a talent show? Part of it was me wanting to do my thing, but I also was always like mobilizing other people in my class to get up and share, whether it be like a song or a dance or a sketch or something. Like I was always sort of like encouraging that stuff. Somewhere along the way, I'm not remembering the question we started with.
Well, we were talking about assumptions, and you were saying that you have to give yourself a pep talk to get out the door.
Yes. So I think, wow, I really went off.
No, because I asked.
I have some more questions about that.
Okay, cool.
It's really good that you said all that.
But yeah, I think I've gone through so many ups and downs with my self-confidence throughout my life. And when I look back, we're talking about introvert, extrovert stuff. Yeah. Like when I look back, I'm like, my true self is an extrovert. I do get energy from a group of, being in a group of people or being around people and having interactions with the outside world. Then there was like a long period where I characterized myself as an introvert because I was just going through a lot of stuff inside and hadn't resolved a lot of it yet. And had a lot of depression and anxiety, and everything did feel extra hard, and this city, as we all know, can feel extra intense.
You were saying that being in Catholic school,
Evangelical Christian school,
even better. that you felt you could be yourself?
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, I did, because I hadn't really formed a worldview yet. And then when I started forming opinions about the world that didn't line up with what philosophies were being taught, I went to Evangelical Christian school from the time I was 2.5 till I graduated high school. So it was a really long time to be in that, it's just like steeped in that environment where we are praying in every, like if in junior high and high school, we prayed at the top of every period. The moment that my beliefs didn't really align with that stuff, I think things changed. And also when I was 14, 15, and sort of when I think I became sort of very visibly like a young woman, where my sexuality seemed a little more visible. Like I think I had a rough time because I had a teacher who sexually harassed me for a year, and that was like definitely a thing that pushed me into a weird headspace, and I think probably contributed to me like wanting to cover myself up. And I think that was
a man.
Oh yeah. A man, a very respected, they always are, like someone that was like a pillar of the community who everybody like really looked up to. And there was never any really, I wouldn't say like there was never justice served, because like what does that even mean? But there was like a confrontation about it involving parents and things like that, and no charges were pressed or anything, but like he just like wouldn't admit to it and went on teaching there, and it was clear my principal didn't really believe me. It was a weird moment.
And when you say sexually harassed,
he was just making sexual comments to me constantly for a year, for a school year. The crazy thing too is just like sometimes they weren't super explicit, but I mean a lot of it wasn't super explicit. He was very cunning in the way he phrased things so that it could possibly be interpreted different ways. But I don't see how, like when I look back, but somehow that's how that went. And sometimes would say things when there were people that seemed like they were within earshot, but they wouldn't even like notice or hear it because they weren't listening for that. And it was just very brazen a lot of times. And it was gaslighting, because there was just, it was just like, I would think like, wow, did I imagine that? Like, did that actually happen? Because nobody's doing anything. Like, why am I feeling this way? And then to further have, a confrontation where these things are laid out and explicitly.
Just denying it,
yeah, totally. And but crying and saying
he's crying.
Yeah, he was like crying,
like how
when he got called out.
Yeah, but crying, and under this guise of like he was so sorry that I had interpreted it this way,
Wow.
And then a year later, it was tough stuff, because he had kids who were close in age to me that I went to school with. And like I said, it was a small school, so it's like I didn't want to make waves.
Right.
And for that matter, I had told some peers who like laughed. Like they didn't believe me either, because it was just so unfathomable to them that this man could do that. And so like the next year I still was attending that school and avoiding him, obviously. And then like his daughter got in a car accident or something like that. And I remember running into him, and, she was like in critical condition or something, I think. And I was like, oh, I heard about your daughter and I'm sorry. And, he was like, oh, thank you. And said something really weird, like, thank you for how you handled that situation last year. It was very Christian of you, or like, that was really good of you. Like my life could have been ruined. And I was like, again, like, wait, did I?
Whose life matters here?
Yeah, and also
first of all, like the boundaries.
Finding myself later too, being like, did I make that
so
up?
Much manipulation, psychologically.
Oh, it was just such a weird thing.
Wow.
So with all the stuff that, like, with the climate we're in now, and people being able to speak freely about this stuff as it happens, I'm definitely like listening with a certain kind of an ear, and I'm glad that person is not teaching anymore, because I know, I couldn't, there's no way I was the only one. I heard sort of murmurings later about other people, but it was just like no one wanted to come forward.
That's a really scary, horrible thing to happen. To feel that way at that age.
He was not good, and I started ditching school a lot, especially yeah, like once I got my license and my friends got licenses, I really, like, I was a truant. I like did not go to a lot of my classes in high school, like at the end of it. And at the time, that wasn't even connected with this situation, which I find interesting.
You mean
like,
in your head?
In my head, in anyone's
Yeah.
head. And that's just interesting to me. That's something I sort of realized recently, like, wait a second. I like school. I liked school. I liked people. I loved my classes. I'm not like a, hyper academic, but I enjoyed the going to school. So I can only surmise that I think I was just being avoidant because it didn't feel like a safe place to be.
What are the ways that you feel like that experience, like you've learned, has affected you, like into your adult life?
I mean, I definitely think it affected some relationships I had with men in my whole life. But particularly in my early 20s, I think it definitely sort of set the tone for what kind of treatment that I was accepting and what I thought I was worth.
Can you talk more about ways that you express yourself outside of your style?
It's funny when I look back now to see how the writing was on the wall, like so explicitly as to what I should be doing, because I've always been doing a version of what I do now in some way. Like I said, those talent shows, but that was expanded upon with every year where I would, it went from like the classroom, third grade show and tell to, when I was in sixth grade, I was like, we should write the play this year, guys. And like, let's write it. And everyone should, like, we should play like real people, like our real teachers, like, everyone should play a teacher. I remember always trying to turn my assignments into something that I would like to do more than what was, like, if it was a book report, I didn't want to have to like write a long book report. So sometimes I would ask if I could do it orally, and then I would make it like a performance in first person of like the protagonist of the book. Like I did all kinds of weird workarounds to be able to just do things the way that my mind worked, and I was lucky enough that I went to this rinky-dink school that was like, hey, no
Letting
rules,
you do
whatever, I don't know. There's ways that I think I've been upset in life about that, in the sense that I'm like, I feel like my discipline is maybe not as good as it could be. Like, I'm just not as good at following rules, even though I'm obsessed with rules and knowing them, and they give me a lot of safety. I don't like to follow them. I'm always looking for like a workaround.
That has to be
not at anyone's expense, but
I
like
feel the same way. That has to be Sag, maybe then.
Maybe, yeah, maybe so.
Can you talk about that? What do you mean by like you like them and they make you feel safe, but yet you don't follow them?
I mean,
like an example of that.
I mean, yeah, what's a good example of that? I don't know. I think even just in the show that I make right now, I think it's like I take a lot of comfort in knowing like what a half-hour television script looks like typically. And I do know, because I worked in casting for 10 years prior to this show taking off, so I've read a lot of scripts. I know what they're quote unquote supposed to be like, and there's like these formulas and a structure,
right?
But I don't follow that. But I don't know that I'd be comfortable doing it the way I did it unless I knew
what you were rebelling against.
Yes, that's always the case for me.
Yeah.
I have to know. And I like there to be rules, because I do think they promote some sort of order in this very chaotic world.
And so has that been, as far as your journey, like creating this show, like was that always something that, or also in your life, like in general as a person, like have you ever felt like you had to conform yourself to rules that didn't make sense to you, or like questioned yourself in that way, or and like what's your journey been like with like trusting your own voice?
It's an ongoing journey, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's, I mean, the biggest way that I feel that is probably just in my, my personal life, the way that I've, it took me almost 40 years before I could like be comfortable with the fact like, I'm a queer person. Like I'm not just a woman who likes, I'm not a quote unquote woman who likes quote unquote men. Like I don't have that, I can't check that box in a really neat way, but I sure did want to for a long time. And because I because of that, I think, and a lot of other things, because of my religious indoctrination. And I mean, mostly that, I think I was unable to sort of be truthful with myself about like who I really was and like what kind of a life I wanted to live. So I feel like that's the biggest way that rules have, and the binary and this whole notion of right and wrong, like that's the main way that's harmed me.
So can you get a little bit more into your journey with your growing awareness and like what that was like?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely started when I was, an adolescent, I think, is when I started gaining awareness about it all, and particularly into my teens. I think when I became sexual, like, I mean, I think I actually, if I'm being honest, like I've been sexual since I was pretty young, but I can't, I don't know, I haven't quite like unpacked the whole, like, was that because of some sort of abuse that I sort of not abuse, but yeah, was that because of some activity that I can't fully recollect? Because I do sort of have these like weird fuzzy memories of some stuff that I can't quite, haven't quite been able to sort
abuse?
out. Yeah, like not physical abuse, like to my physical body that I can remember, but like being exposed to some just sexual scenarios that I was too young to see, or that no one should see, but that I definitely as like a 4 or 5-year-old shouldn't have seen. Yeah. And then just like some weird, I just have like the vague like recollections of things that I'm like, am I imagining this? Did this happen? I'm still on the journey to be like, did it happen? How important is it to me to even know if it happened or not? I don't know. I'm okay. But then when I was about 14, I became sexually active in a more acceptable way with a boyfriend. And, prior to that, I had like some sexual experiences with girls, but I really just chalked it up to, just hormones. I don't know. I guess I was just like, I'm just like a horny kid, like whatever,
How old were you then?
10, 8. I mean, maybe even, and younger, 6 at one point. Yeah. I mean, I had a lot of just different kinds of sexual interactions with friends, with girlfriends. But then like more in earnest when I was in junior high. And then I sort of tried to, I just didn't deal with it at all. Like me and the person that it happened between at that age, like really didn't even acknowledge that it would happen. It would just happen. And then it was like, okay, let's pretend that didn't happen.
Like it would be a friend of yours and it would just like go into a
sexual place. And then it would be like back to rollerblading. Yeah, seriously, it was so strange. It's called repression, guys. But yeah, so then when I was 14, I met I met a guy who became my boyfriend, and we had a very sexual relationship. Like when I look back, I'm like, ooh, that was like kind of compulsively sexual because of him. Like it wasn't my sex drive by any stretch. It was me. I think a combo of me being like relieved to
be with a guy.
Yeah, be with a guy and like be seen. I had just come out of like a really like chubby, awkward, adolescence. So it was like, relief. Like I was psyched to like be cute and like a cute guy likes me. But then that relationship became very like toxic, and he was very controlling, and it just was dark. But it's actually not even worth like really getting into. But the point is, I became very consistently sexual to the extent that it was causing me a lot of grief, stomach aches. Like I had, just terrible stomach aches that I had to like go to the doctor for, and no one could figure out what was up, and, not surprised. But that is sort of, I think, when I became aware of like, wait, this is so weird. Like why is this thing that seems like it's very natural to like want to like have sex and like be physical with my boyfriend? Like, why is this thing that's just like seemingly natural seen as like such an offense, like in the eyes of God and, these people that are teaching me at school? Because look, it was so hammered into my head. This, premarital sex is wrong. And like, I found like old school papers and things where, I mean, I'm just like aghast at these like exercises we had to do in like small groups, you know, talking about just how awful and abominable anything outside of the marriage bed was, you know. So it really, and I have old journals where I'm just like so self-flagellating, you know, being like, I'm having sex every day and I feel so awful and like I feel so guilty and why can't I stop, and like, you know. So I think all this to say, that was a very long-winded way to say, that is the first time I think I started to be aware of like, wait, so natural human behavior is wrong.
It's literally like telling someone that eating is wrong.
Yeah, it's honestly.
Or drinking water.
But I think it all got a little messy for me because the types of the sexual situations that I was finding myself in, like, yeah, there was kind of an ickiness to them when I look back. So
probably in some way as a response to like feeling that it was
completely bad. And on his side as well, my boyfriend, because he was actually someone I knew from church, you know. So
anger and repression and not feeling like in touch with yourself, like feeling like I
was so out of touch with myself. Like I can't, like, this is a lot of information, but no, like, I mean, I had so much sex with this person and I did not come like one time, you know. That's crazy to me to think back. And then I continued to be that way, like through my 20s.
So you were just,
I think that's pretty common.
You were and you didn't know better because you had no idea that this is something that's important for you also.
No. Yeah. It's just such a repression. And then I was lucky when I was in finishing high school. I didn't know what I wanted to do yet. I didn't know about college. My mom, genius that she is, sent me away. She said, what about going to school in Denmark for a few months? My parents are Danish. And that was such a great experience. Like, that is the thing that actually I think helped me start to really break out of that binary, because, you know, imagine going from like suburban California to the evangelical, like I was going to church. I was like super involved in my church group, all this stuff. Going there, living in a dorm with all these very, very secular people, you know, a lot of atheists, and just like very liberal people. And the drinking age was like not a thing. And it's a very sexually free culture there as well. And that was great. Like, to just go be there, figure out like, what do I think about anything, taking classes in philosophy. And I felt like I came into myself.
Thank you again to Oli Biologique for sponsoring this episode.
Oli's multitasking daily essential facial oils are pure, potent, and purposeful, bursting with plant and seed-based botanicals in every golden drop.
Certified vegan, cruelty-free, and without any parabens or synthetics, Oli delivers the nutrients your skin craves fast.
Oli's products are all sustainably sourced, cold-pressed, gluten-free, and non-GMO, using whole plant ingredients.
Save 20% with the code StyleLikeU20 at amazon.com/olibiologique. That's amazon.com/olibiologique with StyleLikeU20 for 20% off your order.
And so then into your 20s and to now, like with your journey with
oh man,
I know it's a big journey.
Oh my God, I know. Well, yeah, I just turned 40, so I feel like I used to talk about that time like it was just yesterday, but it's like, no, that was half a lifetime ago at this point. After that I went to Chicago, got in a relationship with a man.
So at that point you were only dating men, or okay.
At that point, yes.
Did you ever have like dalliances with ladies?
Not for like that post high school moment, but then like I moved to Chicago, started a new chapter, got with this guy, we got married. He needed a green card and I was like, I love you, let me help. We could be married. I want to marry, you know, I'll marry you. And then, you know,
where was he from?
Serbia. Well, you know, lovely person. Yeah, in the end, like we lasted not at all. He got his green card without my assistance. You know, it was just one of those things. But when I was with him was when I coincidentally also was like, oh, I kind of like women. I do. And then I actually had a relationship, like a more long-term one with someone then, a woman. but it was like so messed up because it was like I was with this guy and this my husband at the time, and he was like, I expressed it to him that I wanted this, and he was like, oh yeah, no problem, like that's hot,
right.
you know, like they all do. And then it wasn't so hot suddenly to him when I was
like really into
this person, right? So then the problems began. That was like a tough time for me too. I was probably 22-ish then. And I remember that's when I started to be like, wait, I'm not straight. Like I'm not straight. And
did you say that out loud? Or
I did. And that's sort of like a not a great chapter in my mom's and my life. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What did she say?
She was dismissive of it, which is, I'm sure, I don't know how she recalls it. And I certainly am not upset with her by any stretch today. Like I understand, I guess,
different times. It was very
different times. And I think she just thought because we had a much different relationship then. We were a lot more codependent, for lack of a better word. We like, I called her before I did anything. Like I was always just like, I needed her go ahead for a lot of things in my life. And I just shared way more with her. Like we did not have good boundaries when I was young. And I could see how she would think like, well, I know you and I've never seen any evidence of this. So like, you're not, no.
Like you're married to a guy.
Yeah, you're married to a guy. And she didn't like him.
Oh. And
she thought he was gay, which is really funny because he's so not like at all. But like, it was just ironic because I was like, no. I'm the gay one. Like it's me. And she was just like, oh, you're not, like you're just
unhappy.
You're unhappy. Like, oh, I get it. Like, she's like, no. So that was the first time that I sort of put my toe in the water of IDing myself that way. And it didn't, and then I think I could just like hide behind my mom's like dismissal of that and then kind of crawl back again because I didn't get it. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm straight, I guess, or bi to people who really know me. I could say that. That was like the word I would use then. But as time went on, I did, like I had more sexual experiences with women that were all like so on the DL, like always, until Ben.
And did you feel different in your sexual experiences with women? Did you feel like more like you were they more positive experiences for you as far as
they were like, until they weren't, they were until the feelings of guilt and shame would overcome me because of me feeling like I wasn't supposed to be doing that. And that was a confusing feeling for me as well, because I was like, well, intellectually, I know there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. I have many gay friends and I have gay family members, and like, why would I, and then I would think to myself, well, I don't think I'm really gay. I don't think I want a relationship with a woman. I think I just like them sexually, which is just like,
it's amazing, the mind game.
Wow. Yeah. So funny to me that I would say that. And
but instinctually you would have a better interaction, like a sexual interaction, but then
I was just drawn more to women. And like looking back, it's just funny. Like I'm just like, oh yeah, like I would have like face blindness to dudes like all the time, like meaning
wouldn't even care.
Like not even seeing them, you know, like anything I would ever like watch, like a film or a TV show, like I'm only looking at the women. And but I was just not allowing myself to fully go there ever. And I would just like you said, play these weird mind games to justify why I would have this interest. And then I met Ben, and I think our relationship was so consuming, and we very quickly started creating together. And that really is the thing that I also fell in love with, was the thing.
And just for anyone who's listening that's not like already a super fan of High Maintenance, like the two of us,
we're just Ben, everyone is.
Yeah,
all 40 of you out there.
Ben is the co-creator of High Maintenance and also is the star of the show, and that's who we're talking about.
I remember, and he does too, waking up one morning, we're sleeping together, and I woke up and I was like, this is so weird. I know I hesitate to say this, but I dreamt that we had a baby, and it's not me saying I want to have a baby, because like I actually don't even know if I want to have kids, but I had this dream that we had a baby, and the baby was like really like muscular, almost looked like a bodybuilder baby. and spoke like a full-grown adult. Like it was an infant that looked like a bodybuilder and like was so
Wow,
precocious
that's an
beyond
intense
their
dream.
years. And it really stuck with me. And he was like, looked at me with this look, which at first I interpreted as like horror, that the person he was sleeping with for 3 months was like, we had a baby. And he was like 25 years old. But he, the reason he got that look on his face was because he had a similar dream the same night and he's like, well, mine was a little older, but it was still like a toddler and they looked like you. And they were talking like a full grown adult. It was crazy. And we were both like, well, that's so
That's really
weird.
intense.
So like we had that dream, which now we both
I
are
have
like, that was high maintenance.
I have baby dreams.
Yeah.
All the time.
I mean,
And
it's
house
very
dreams.
symbolic, I think.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really chillingly amazing. Wow.
So when you
Weird.
met, were you
The union was
it was there. Yeah.
yeah.
Were you already working on like projects at that point, or were you just romantically
No,
involved?
We were just romantically involved. Yeah. I did not make an inquiry to my sexuality for a good chunk of time when I was with him, because it was simply just not on the radar. I think I was having so many of my buttons hit with what we were doing that it just like, it was not something I was in touch with.
I mean, it gave you, if not the most important thing, one of the most important things that's ever happened to you.
It's really true. And it's really funny. I don't know if you ever saw the episode where it's like the season finale of our first HBO season. And it's this one where you learn like, oh, the guy was he was married and his ex-wife is a lesbian and she lives down the hall. That was before I was out.
Right. I wondered that. Yeah.
And I wasn't even out to myself at that moment, which is like a little embarrassing to look back and be like, oh my God, like Katja, really? Like you, okay.
Because you wrote that, you mean?
I fucking wrote it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and I wasn't
I
out.
know, but your unconscious was trying to heal.
Yeah.
You can only, it's nothing to be embarrassed about. Then again, it's the same thing. Like, it needed to happen that way because
It was your way of healing. And
I
like,
guess
you
so,
wouldn't have
yeah.
written, it wouldn't have come out in this other way.
Right.
But so when did that not start, like, continue to work for you?
We were still making the web series. We were about to transfer it to a paid model at that point. And we'd been making it for like a few years, and we'd been together a few years. And then I wrote about this in like a piece for Vogue too, where it's like, I got into this like depression. Like I have no other way to characterize it. It was like true depression, like where I didn't want to get out of bed in the morning and I would just wake up crying. And it was so strange. Like it really felt like it came out of nowhere and I couldn't even figure out why. And
Had you ever been depressed like that before?
not to that extent, but I've always been a moody, emotional person who knows what depressed feelings feel like, but I hadn't quite experienced something so dramatic where I just was like, I don't even want to take a shower, leave the house, like any of that. And where I couldn't even put my finger on like what it was. Like in the past I could sort of point to like, well, this is going on and this is going on and I'm so down, or like I don't like my body right now, or like whatever. And this time it was just like, no, like I was like running 5 miles a day. Like I felt like I was in peak physical condition. Like I had an art project that was becoming a job. Like I had, I think I might have even had like an Emmy at that point for casting, like good shit, like I was in my 30s and, getting to know myself more. But, it just hit me. And luckily my best friend, Russell, he's also a producer on our show. He and Ben were both like the people I was closest to at that moment. And we were all making this thing together, and Russell helped me get a therapist, which was so helpful. Like I was not even able to pick up the phone and do that. And
How were you able to like do your job?
Yeah, I was, but I felt like a zombie. And I mean, weirdly, we made work during that time that I'm like really proud of. And I'm like, how did I don't know how I did that. Like, I know I was a nightmare to be around.
How was that for Ben?
I think it was awful for him. I mean, it's so hard to live with someone who's depressed. I had experienced that before with someone else. Like I had another partner who was so deeply depressed and I was on the other side of it, and you just feel so helpless. Like, what can I do for this person? And I mean, and later Ben had a little round with depression too. And he felt empathetic because he's kind of dark too by nature. So yeah, he just wanted to help, and like he didn't know what he could do other than just try to, be there for me and shoulder whatever load he could.
And were you guys married at that point?
Mm-hmm.
Were you at the same time, like intimacy and everything?
No, it was like really falling off at that point. I wasn't really interested in sex. I wasn't interested in anything. And it wasn't even like, I'm not interested in sex with him, but I'm going to like go masturbate. It was like, no, I'm disconnected from my body. Mm-hmm. Like I don't have any sexual feelings for anyone or anything. Didn't have much regard for myself in that moment. Mm-hmm. I got hooked up with an amazing therapist who I just remember sitting on her couch and like crying to her that first day. And I don't even remember what I was talking about, but like I just remember her looking into her eyes, and she wasn't crying, like she wasn't like tearing up per se, but like her eyes were kind of glassy, and she was like very like so clearly like empathizing and seeing me and hearing me and like feeling for me. And I was just like, oh my God, like this woman, yes, sign me up. Like she's hearing me, I can talk to her. And yeah, and then I've been seeing her ever since. I mean, this has been like it's probably been 5 years now. Yeah. And I got on antidepressants, and those things in combination started me on a 3-year journey to where I eventually was able to recognize like I shouldn't be in that relationship anymore for my sake, for his sake. And yeah, and I'm like, oh, I'm queer. Like it's not just like, oh, I want to fuck women. It's like, no, I want to be in a relationship with women. Like that is what I want my life to look like. So, but my therapist was helpful in that.
So what happened? Like what made you kind of like, what was that process?
So
that peeling of.
Not long after my meds and everything had sort of started to like take hold and help me out a little bit out of the hole, I met this woman who was out, openly gay, and we had an energy when we met, and I followed it through and I slept with her, and then I lied about it, which was weird because I didn't even have to. Like literally, like Ben asked me to my face if I had done that, and I was like, no. Which was just like crazy because he totally was like, well, like if you did, like just tell me, like let's talk about it, like. But it was the lying that was fucked up, and I didn't get the courage to tell him for like 2 weeks. Like I held on to that for 2 weeks. It like ate me alive. I fucking hated it. It was so dark. I didn't realize I was gay at that moment, but I think there was a part of my subconscious that really was like there was an alarm bell that went off, and that is the thing that made me lie, because I think on some level I knew probably like that if I admitted to all this, like maybe I'd have to like examine my true heart about things.
Everything else would change outside.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot.
And Ben and I were not doing that well, like we just felt like we were really hanging on by a thread, not because of this, but just it turns out like we're not like romantically compatible. Like we're like very creatively compatible and as friends very compatible, but no, not as life partners. That's different. And so, it was just like a soup of circumstance that would and it also just felt like if I like pull this one little piece out from the Jenga tower, it's like all gonna fall,
right. I mean, that's terrifying.
Scary.
Yeah, I think, and
so
I
it's
think
understandable.
Anyone who's been in my position, I think, knows what that's
terrifying.
like. And I didn't even have like kids or anything that I had to like consider,
well,
but I had this thing that felt like a kid for me. And yeah, it was just also, I think I didn't want this narrative to be like, oh, if we break up, it's 'cause I'm gay. Like, it's like, no, it was not that. It was like, I don't know. It wasn't like we were living some lie and then like I needed to come out and then so we could break up.
And the whole thing was not real.
It's not that. It was just like, it was all kinds of things. And so that happened. And when I finally came clean about it, you know, we had to like put ourselves back together a little bit. But yeah, it took a good 3 years before I was able to actually sort of face the truth, and him too, like for himself, about the relationship. It wasn't even just like I needed to come to terms with my queerness. It was like, no, we both needed to come to terms with like we could be okay outside of this relationship. But he was scared too. He didn't want to be in the relationship for a while, you know, but he too was like, we had a codependent relationship and we had a lot riding on it, and no one wanted to leave it.
So what was the
turning point?
Yeah. And like the
election, I just felt like an urgency about
to live your life.
Yeah. Literally the way I was feeling when that happened was like, who knows what's going to happen? Like it truly felt like everything was in jeopardy. It felt like we, like humanity was in jeopardy as we know it. And yeah, so it just became very urgent for me at that moment. But it wasn't like that happened and then I like announced to Ben like we were already separated at that point, but sort of trying to decide like, do we want to like keep trying to make this work under a new premise, or like what's up? And I think that it just required that event to happen for us to be like, nope, like let's go forge our own paths in life. And we had an order for another season, so we were like, we're gonna have to work together, we know that much, but like we don't have to be together as like a couple. So let's work on that part. But yeah, I mean, the months leading up to that, we were already trying to figure that out.
And you were, was there a long period of time where like you were comfortable being open with your therapist, but just not anyone else?
Not really. Not really. But I definitely I actually sat up in bed one day in mid 2016, and like it was like something out of a stupid like rom-com. Like if I had read this on a page submitted to me, I would be like, okay, that's not realistic, try again. But like I remember like sitting up in bed, because we had separate bedrooms at this point, sitting up in bed and being like, I'm gay. Like I said it out loud. I was like, oh my God, well, like I just had this weird thing, like I said it out loud, and then I like was like, okay, and like I went like lay down and like fell asleep. It was so weird. And then I talked to my therapist about it, and very soon after was like saying it to Ben also, being like, hey, like this is not just some sexual proclivity, this is like myself, like this is who I am, and it's not anything that defines me, but it's very weird to not like explore claim this part of my life when I have the luxury to do so. Like I'm in a position where there is no reason for me to have to suppress this, so why am I doing so? I mean, that's the thing that I think about so much, like all the stuff we're talking about with like self-care and self-actualization in all the ways. Like it is a privilege to be able to have these concerns and to be able to live authentically the way that we're all sort of espousing in our work, you know, that is not an option for everyone. Like there are so many people who, first of all, just
survival. They're
just surviving, or they live somewhere where they're just like not free to be who they are. They will be killed or disowned or whatever. And so, yeah, I think with the election came that feeling attached as well, that like, well, you know, it feels like the world's going to hell, but like right now, today, I have all my rights intact, and I am a person who can move freely in the world with any sort of identity that I would want to have, more or less. So why am I not claiming
it's
this
like,
one?
what is my life? What am I doing? Like what am I here for?
Yep. And that's the feeling we walked into our second season writer's room with. And I think it showed. Like I felt like I really liked last season a lot, how it felt. It had a good feeling about it, and I like the energy we had in that room, the writers and us. We were all just feeling similarly, and I like what came out of it. I remember walking in that first day in January and being like, hey, because no one knew at that point that we weren't together anymore, and that we had even been separated for as long as we had, because we were actually still living in the same apartment. It was a big apartment. And it was cool to walk in and be like, hey, this is the update. This is what's going on with us. But here we are. You know, we're very willing to be transparent about what's going on in our lives and our hearts right now, and are inviting you to do the same, to this group, and to whatever degree of comfort you have with that. And, it might get ugly sometimes in here because we have not been able, we don't logistically have the time to take off from each other to process this whole thing. So we'll do our best and try to keep it out of your face. But just, we're coming here trying to be honest. And it did sort of set the tone. I think everybody was very forthcoming about life stuff in that room, and the good, the bad, the ugly. And surprisingly, we did sort of come through relatively unscathed, I mean, we had our ups and downs, and I'm sure some of those writers would be like, ooh, about some of the days they spent in there. Even though we never had any explosions, I think there were some tense days, as to be expected. But I think that even without a divorce on the horizon, you're going to find that, especially with people who have been collaborating as long as we have now.
How did you change? How did your life change? How did you feel?
I was so happy. God, because I met my current girlfriend. I met really soon after coming out more publicly, and it also just coincided with the writer's room starting and all of that. So I had a spring in my step for sure every day. I felt so light because not only was I out, but I had met this really incredible person that I liked so much. And I, at the time I didn't know that it was going to be as long term as now now it's been 2 years, and we live together and are very, devoted to our relationship. But at the time I didn't know that. She's a little bit younger, and I also thought whoever I'm dating, first person, out of the gate here. I mean, I was dating, actually, full disclosure, I was dating someone else when I met her. Not, exclusively or anything, but I was literally with that person when I met her, which is kind of funny, but we're all pals now. It's fine. But, yeah, but this was the first person that I really fell for. And I thought well, that seems crazy. I feel like I'm supposed to have some really robust love life at this moment, and it did feel like a second sort of adolescence for a moment. It's only just now starting not to feel that way, to be quite honest, because I haven't, I've actually, if I'm being perfectly candid, which I am, I avoided a lot of queer women for a long time, because I think I remember, because Ben would actually tease me and stuff about being gay and when we were together, and I think I thought oh, if I start hanging out with these people, everyone's gonna think I'm gay, which is just so funny, because it's yeah, because you are, bitch. But when I look back, I can see how I kind of kept those people at an arm's length. So that was another thing, is I came out, and then I was suddenly able to freely move around in the queer community because I could just be open and out, and that felt really good. But with that, yeah, I felt I was supposed to probably aren't you supposed to just date a ton of people when you're newly single, anyway, gay or straight? And that just didn't really happen, because I met this person and was sort of immediately taken.
I don't think there's any rules.
There are no rules, is what I'm finding out, and you can make them up every week if you want,
No rules to that.
Yep.
And so to step into something like that after such a long struggle,
I mean, it was very.
What are the words? What did you feel? What did you feel?
I felt really vulnerable, to be honest, and in the room especially, and with Ben, I felt actually more vulnerable than ever, because I felt everything I was saying in the room now, maybe had some sort of color to it, of my business was so on blast, to everybody. So I really just felt vulnerable. I just felt people would be, ascribing certain meaning to everything I was saying, or looking at it all through this very particular lens when maybe they wouldn't have before, which made me feel vulnerable. Even just in the past, I could suggest that things that were queer specific, and not necessarily feel that
you'd be judged.
Yeah. Right. And so now that I'm doing it, then I feel oh, there's going to be an assumption well, that's all she's interested in, because that's why she's queer, now she's out. It's no, But yeah, I felt vulnerable in that way. And also it was weird to go from being so tight with my partner to then being in this new space where we had to like reestablish new boundaries and, navigate like what's our new relationship going to look like, because we're seeing each other every single day, and then we get into production and we're still seeing each other every single day, and it's for like 15 hours at a time, and it's you're figuring a lot of stuff out again. You're renegotiating things and the way you're presenting yourself, and I think I felt nervous to like go into certain spaces, like figuratively and literally, just like how would I be received. And I have, like I said, like my girlfriend is a bit younger, and like I didn't want to look like I definitely had a moment of like, do I look ridiculous? Like I'm because I felt like I was 13 again inside. I felt like I had to sort of relearn.
You didn't have a chance to be yourself.
Exactly. So
you had to go through it again.
So I felt that. Like I definitely felt that.
You said earlier your art project was becoming a job. Were you ever really frustrated with your career? Or were you ever feeling like stuck, or did it all kind of just unfold organically?
I mean, all of those things. Yeah. In my early 20s, I just, like I said, I didn't really have like an academic experience. I went to community college part-time for a few years while I actually worked at a bakery, which I really liked that job, to be quite honest. I also became very close with the people I worked with, and I liked the people I was coming into contact with. But I just could not figure out what I wanted to do. Like they were like, oh, we're going to open another bakery. Like maybe you can manage it. And I was like, oh, I could do that. Like, yeah, I could be a bakery manager. Sure.
Oh my God.
Like so truly, like these are the thoughts I was having. And then I went to Chicago on like a whim. I lived there for a few years. I worked at a university. I worked at Northwestern, did not go there. And again, just like I did not know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted something creative. I did take like night school classes through Northwestern in like advertising, because I was like, well, that's a job that makes money and is creative. And I was just not good at that. Like just inherently, it is not my space. So yeah, I figured that out pretty quickly. And then one day I just kind of thought to myself, wait, remember when you were 12 and you used to say you wanted to be a casting director? Like, remember that little weird pipe dream you had when you found out that Christian Slater's mom did that for a living? And then I sent out my resume to to like the 3 casting directors in Chicago who, like, of course no one returned my inquiry, because why would they? I had no experience
with your bakery job.
Yeah, I was like,
your resume.
Yeah,
bakery.
My resume was so weird. And then I was in a relationship with someone in New York. I moved to join him in New York, and I was like, I'm going to be a casting director. Like, that's just what's going to happen. I don't know. I didn't have any plan except to get an internship. Everyone that I left behind in Chicago thought I was crazy. I got here, and very shortly after I started interning, and I did have a knack for it. And I was lucky that I was with the right person to see my potential. And, casting directors are good at spotting potential in all the ways. And this woman was no exception. And her name is Jennifer McNamara. She cast Sex and the City and won a lot of Emmys for her work on that. And she also was part of casting like so many indie films that I loved. And so, yeah, she took me on, and she saw something in me and gave me a lot of opportunities to sort of flex and grow. And I mean, my career moved quickly, I think. I feel like some people get stuck as like a casting associate for a really long time. And, I didn't get stuck there. So,
and the next thing was the show.
The next day, I did casting for a long time, and we did. She took me over to 30 Rock. Like, she got that maybe like a year into me working with her, and took me with her over there. And I mean, that show went on for so long, and I sort of got to graduate professionally while that show was going on, which was cool. And then High Maintenance was like we said, it was just like an art project that.
You were doing it on the side.
And not with I had no goal in mind other than, 30 Rock was winding down. Like we, knew that it wasn't going to be around forever. It was sort of later on in its run. And I had been sort of having this teacher schedule for like, years because of it getting picked up every season. So like I knew like, oh, I'm going to work these months and then I'll have the summers off. And like I didn't really have to go hustle to get other jobs, luckily. Well, that was coming to a close and I was like, got to figure this out. Maybe, and Ben needed some footage of himself, being something other than a crazy homeless person, which at that point was sort of all he had been cast as. And, I saw his charm and I thought he was attractive and funny. And I don't know, I kind of wanted to help give him some footage. And he was doing like, film production-y kind of stuff, like kind of learning how to edit and all this kind of a thing. And he had writing aspirations as well. If we made something together, then I could be in charge of like not only casting it, but sort of deciding who was cast, So I thought, well, maybe if I do this thing, people will see what kind of actors I like and sort of get a feel for me. And then maybe I'll get like really cool offers for like cool casting jobs when this ends. That's what I thought. That's it. And then we thought maybe we'll have some good footage of Ben to help him get better roles.
That's fascinating.
It's wild.
And then here we are. It's so wild to me. But like the takeaway from all of it is just follow your heart. Because honestly, I left in the middle of that 30 Rock run to go to LA. I had a breakup with the previous boyfriend. And I don't know. I was just like, New York was getting to me. I was cold. I was like, get me out of here. I moved to LA for like a few months. And then I hurriedly came back and luckily they took me back at 30 Rock. But while I was in LA is when I met Ben. So it's kind of interesting how that works. And I had just moved all my stuff there and I didn't move back because of Ben. Like I truly wanted to move back the moment my plane touched down. Like I was just like, oh no, this wasn't the right move. Like, why did I do that? Why didn't I just like take a trip? Like, why did I need to like move all my shit here? What's wrong with me? But I did for whatever reason. And it was good. It ended up being a really good thing. And then I moved back and my takeaway is just, I really do, for all the noise that's in my head and for all the insecurities I have and the struggles with self-worth and all of it, I do follow my heart. I do. I've made a lot of big sweeping moves in my life that had no reason on paper to work out, like that, no compelling evidence to suggest that I should do these things. And other than like, because I want to. And again, I'm going to cite my privilege, not everyone can just whimsically move around the country and follow every lead their heart throws out there. But I was able to.
When do you feel the most beautiful?
Gosh, I feel the most beautiful a lot of times when I'm on vacation, like when I'm just like away from the demands of my life and just sort of more free to revert to like naturalism. I don't know, like in every way, like sleeping when my body is tired and waking up when it's not, and wearing whatever clothes suit the climate and not the function or the event or the company I'm going to be in, and having a lot of my sort of defenses down if I'm, just like in a state of relaxation. Yeah, I think I feel the most beautiful then. And I also, I do feel beautiful a lot of times with my partner. Like she reflects something really beautiful. The best parts of myself she'll reflect back to me, and that's a cool thing. And I feel really like seen by that person, and she has seen a lot of my not so great aspects too, and has never held them against me. So yeah.
And what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Oh man, I want to give her a hug so bad. I wouldn't want to change anything. I would just want to tell her like it's going to be okay. Like you're going to have dark times when you feel like you're not okay, but you're okay. I mean, I know it's like such a boring thing. I feel like that's isn't that what we would all say? Come on. But it's going to be okay. And I wouldn't like give her advice to like do anything differently other than to accept herself more, because I think all the weird left turns that like my life has taken are part of, they're part of the journey. They're part of who made me who I am. But I wish I wouldn't have had so much pain and angst around the uncertainty or like perceived lack of acceptance from other people and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Thank you so
absolutely
much.
Amazing.
No, I mean,
I feel like, woo.
I love talking
So-
with you guys, and
so
I love
beautiful.
I love this. I love what you do. I know I keep
Thank
saying, but I
you.
really do. I think it's like, it's so important. It's important work, and I like. There's so many times I've listened to episodes and have just felt such resonance of like, wow, we are all going through these things. We have unique stories, but they're not unique in the way that like what's at the heart of all of them. It's
They're the pain is universal.
A final thank you to Oli Biologique for sponsoring this episode of What's Underneath.
With the idea that we need to celebrate, not fix our natural selves, Oli's skincare products aim to get your skin glowing with no filters and no extraneous hype.
You can keep up with Oli via Instagram at Oli Organic Oils and learn more at olibiologique.com.
And save 20% with the code StyleLikeU20 at amazon.com/olibiologique. That's amazon.com/olibiologique with StyleLikeU20 for 20% off your order.
That link will also be in the show information.
We hope you were inspired by this episode.
Until next week, that's it from me, Elisa.
And me, Lily.
If you agree that facades separate us and being radically honest brings us together, help spread the movement for radical self-acceptance by sharing this episode, subscribing to our podcast, and joining us on Patreon.
Head over to patreon.com/StyleLikeU to support our work and help us build a world where everyone feels comfortable and safe in their own skin.
And if you fall in love with each of our guests as much as we do, you can see them in their full self-expression by subscribing to our YouTube channel and following us on Instagram and Facebook using the handle @StyleLikeU.
That's the letter U instead of the word you.
And check out our book, True Style is What's Underneath, The Self-Acceptance Revolution on Amazon or at a local bookstore near you.
We can't skip ahead to a happy ending or live inside a photoshopped image or an Instagram filter. There is no finding oneself when glossing over the truth.